Here come the judge, my dear friend, the mayor of Hunky Alley of New Brighton fame. He is Judge Jim Ross. So honored to have him here tonight for some high school memories. And listen, I'm going to open up the yearbook. Of course, talk about this guy over here, your coach, Jim.
Joe Hamilton?
Yes.
Yes, he came to New Brighton for a 1968 football season and he started a dynasty. He really did. He coached at New Brighton for a number of years, but during my 3 years there, the 69, 70, 71 seasons, he was 8-1, 8-1, and 8-1. Probably maybe the best 3-year run in the history of a high school, if not close to it.
Well, and there they are, the Pride, the New Brighton Lions, of course, recently celebrating their 50th high school reunion. My twin sisters, Melanie and Janine, classmates of Mr. Ross, and lots of great memories. And we're going to go through this lineup. We're going to talk about those amazing seasons during his 3-year run at New Brighton. But this is how it's always good to get caught up with people, because as time passes, you forget certain things. And I always thought there was a major speed bump between Abramski, who went on to coach, obviously, Poe James, and then Joe Montana at Ringgold. And when you guys got rolling with Coach Hamilton, there was a small one, but it wasn't much of anything, was it? It was a pretty good decade between those two coaches.
Yes, really. Chuck Abramski, I believe he was at New Brighton 3 or 4 years, but I think he was there for sure during the 65, 66, and 67 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Poe James senior year, they went 8-0-2. When Terry Peluso was there as a quarterback, and I believe Poe was a junior, they were, I believe, 8-1 or 9-1. They beat Hopewell with Doc Medich,
right,
but they lost to Beaver, and Beaver in turn lost to Hopewell. So it was a great rivalry back then, where 3 teams were 8-1 in the MAC, and none of them made the playoffs because of the Gardner point system.
Yeah.
But everybody really thinks that once Abramski left, football fell apart in New Brighton, which is really not true, because Joe Hamilton came in, had one mediocre year, and then skyrocketed again with some very, very good teams.
Listen, one of the things you did as a kid, and I did it, and he was one of my many heroes, but you would always be up along the fence when there were thousands on a Friday night at Oak Hill, just hoping to get a glimpse of your heroes. And there were people back in the day for me, Poe James, Skip Kluka,
Yes.
Jimmy Swan, Moses Perkins, Billy Rays. These guys meant so much to me. There was such a group of talent over that period between Abramski and Hamilton. We're going to talk more about your years, but I don't know of any school in this area who had that much talent in that short period of time during my time being a fan and growing up than what New Brighton had.
Yes, Poe James may have been, at least in my estimation, the greatest high school running back I've ever seen. A lot of people may not remember, but in Poe James' senior year, which would have been the 1967 football season, he played in 10 games and scored 200 points. He averaged 20 points a game in football. That's a great average in basketball, but to do that in football was amazing. People may not remember the Bell Vernon game, but Bell Vernon was a class ahead of New Brighton. I think they were AA and New Brighton may have been A at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Bell Vernon came down and played New Brighton on a Friday night. New Brighton beat Bell Vernon 34-33, and Poe James scored every single point in the game. Every single point. He actually would kick the ball, kick off, and kick it out of the stadium into the yards of the houses across the street when he was 17, 18 years old. He was so amazing.
Listen, I just have such great memories. And what's ironic, that scoring record broke decades later by a relation, none other than Essex Law.
Yes.
And Essex told me that he would actually call him and he would school him on the best way to go about breaking that scoring record. So it's all in the family. We love Beaver County. Now, let's talk about some of the players that you played with, and their names like Pasquale and Tusick and Toole and Sabo, and you had George, you had Uria, and Jeffrey Murdoch, who was a tremendous, sad to say, no longer with us, running back as well. But talk about some of the players that you played with.
Well, my sophomore year, we had tremendous talent. Our quarterback at that time was Tom Haddix.
Yep.
The defensive end, Rick Davidson, may have been one of the toughest football players I've ever seen. Jimmy Macri was a tackle, and they just had tremendous talent on that team. They went 8-0 during the MAC season, and we're already in the WPL playoffs. And unfortunately, we played Bishop Boyle the very last game of the year and went a little flat and lost. Should have been a 9-0 season, ended up 8-1. But that team was very talented, and we knew going into the next year we were going to have more talent because we had people like Dan Pratte, Mike Adams, Bill Fortune,
Adam Johnson, Joel McKenna.
yeah, and we also had a running back that people forget about, but his name was Tony Rose.
Oh,
He was a hunky alley boy.
Yeah.
He was the running back my junior year, and was tremendous. Just a tremendous athlete. He gained over 1,000 yards, was first team All-MAC, and went on to Clarion and was a running back there. Very good player. My junior year, that team was led by Jeff Rabika as the quarterback. They had Mike Leaf as split end. They had a lot of talent and people with heart who just wanted to play football for the love of the game. And unfortunately, that team lost to Beaver after just annihilating Rochester, which was the Big Blue Machine, and they were picked to win the WPL that year. Yes, Bobby Anuska, the Jackson brothers, Matt Sitzman. They had a very talented team, and we beat them at New Brighton. It was just an annihilation that night. But the games that were experienced back then, hard fought. If you go back to the year before, the 69 season, we barely beat Rochester that year, 25-22. Terry Borkovic dove for a pass in the end zone from Tom Haddix, and he scored a touchdown and we won the game. And then that junior year, after killing Rochester, the team we thought was going to be the WPL champion, we went over to Beaver the next week and were flat and lost. And that was the only loss that year. But there was a player on that team. His name was Paul Spickerman. He was the mayor's son.
Right.
He may have been the greatest high school athlete that I have ever seen. I mean that sincerely from this standpoint. During my high school career, Paul played offensive guard, defensive end, tight end. And in track, he ran the anchor leg of the 400-yard relay for track with two bum knees, and he weighed like 220 and was 6'2". You don't find people like that.
Speaking of track,
yes,
you brought this up. God bless Eva Newman. I love her wherever she is. Bob Newman I would have walked 5 miles in the snow without shoes to get an autograph. He was so ahead of his time. There was so much speed. I mentioned Jimmy Swan earlier.
Yes.
These guys, when I was a kid, they were just flat out fantastic to be around.
Very good football players.
Yeah.
But, New Brighton was pretty blessed back then with tremendous players. And during my sophomore year, Dan Pratte, as a junior, played defensive tackle, was all conference, tremendous, had a scholarship offer from Nebraska after his junior year, and never played football again. He has since passed away, but we had some tremendous players.
So here's what else he tells me earlier tonight. I've known Mr. Sabo forever. You never see him and Santa in the same room at the same time. Does the best ever. We saw a video many times of him portraying Santa. He did a video with me here. Just love him. I didn't realize, because I always saw him at my sister's basement parties where you were at and everybody else, but he was a really good football player.
Yes, in fact, that year, our senior year, Beaver had a tremendous team. They had a running back named Benny Coleman, who only went to school till the football season was over and quit. He was a man amongst boys, but they also had Jeff Hardy, who was tremendous.
Great running back.
And they had a center by the name of Bob Stout. His father owned some car dealerships in Beaver. And Bobby Stout and Mike Sabo were just neck and neck in terms of centers. They were tremendous. And it turned out at the end of the year, Bob Stout was first team all conference, Mike Sabo was second team all conference. But being biased as I probably am, I thought Mike Sabo was better than Bobby Stowe.
You know what else? Joe Hamilton did his coach's show for years. He's been a big part of my life, just a great mentor. Tom Hansen, his longtime assistant. I don't get through math class without him in New Brighton. I forgot how young he really was when he started that journey with Midland, and then he obviously matriculates to New Brighton and then all those years at Blackhawk. But he was in his 20s when he started this journey, right?
Yeah, I believe so. When he started at Midland, I think he coached there in 65, 66, 67. I think he coached Richie Mayhurt down there, and he may have had a 9-1 season. But he was only in his 20s when he got that job. And when he came to New Brighton, if he wasn't in his 20s, he was in his early 30s. And he was quite a guy. He was like a Big Ten coach.
Yeah.
4 yards in a cloud of dust. You know, that was his philosophy, but he built teams on defense. For example, my senior year, we were 8-1. We led the county in scoring points per game. We ended up we scored 947 points in 9 games, averaging 26.4 points per game. But what was amazing is we only gave up, I think, 57 points in 9 games. We ended up 6.4 points per game, and of that, we gave up 18 to Rochester and 9 to Beaver. So we gave up 27 points in 2 games and 30 points in the other 7. So we led the county in scoring and offense, and we were second in defense to Beaver. It was pretty tremendous.
You know, I tell people all the time, and I love high school football, the Allegheny Health Sports Network Game of the Week, Friday Night Lights will begin on August 26th. You've got the defending Class 6A state champion Bobby Palco, Mount Lebanon, taking on Don Hall and, of course, Gateway. But I tell people all the time, those great communities, and you know, you think of North Hills, you think of Mars, you think of Pine Richland, you think of obviously teams like Central Catholic, and what have you, those larger classifications, Mount Lebanon, West Allegheny. It's pretty much what New Brighton, Beaver Falls, Beaver was back in the 60s and 70s. And you refresh my memory, but there truly were thousands of people at these games on Friday night back then, right?
Yes. Poe James' senior year, the 2 top running backs in Beaver County were Poe James and Herbie Ellis.
Right.
Poe won the scoring title with 200 points. Herbie scored 144 in the second. They claimed that night that there were 10,000 people at New Brighton Field to watch that game, and it was played to a 13-13 tie.
Unbelievable.
My senior year, when we played Beaver, there were 2 undefeated teams coming into that game, and the winner was going to the WPL championship. I believe we had between 6,000 and 7,000 people in that stadium, and it saddens me because every year, just to go back and see my alma mater play, I usually go back to a New Brighton game or 2. If they get 400 or 500 people there today, it's...
Well, what's the mindset? What's the reason for that, do you think? Especially when you look at places like Pine Richland that are putting 10,000 people, and here's what's amazing too, and I've talked on the radio about this, that one WPIL championship game, 1970 or whenever it was, you played Richland, Terry Borkovic made the great catch.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people don't realize Richland became Pine Richland, but back in the day, you were playing teams like that with
Yes.
types of enrollment. And I know enrollments have changed, but you think back when Ambridge in their heyday, I mean, I've heard stories when Bay Pirelli played there were 12,000 people, you know, watching the game when he was, you know, representing Rochester. So who knows, but something has happened in these smaller schools. Is it just census numbers have gone down? What is it?
I'm not sure, Rob, but there is, I think, there has to be a certain mentality in the team, in the coach,
Right.
and in the community. For example, one of my favorite people right now in this county is Mike Warfield. You cannot find a better man in this county than Mike Warfield now.
He's been here.
He played there, he went into the state police for 25 years and retired, and now he's back in the community he grew up in. If you go online and Google Mike Warfield, there's a video on there of him and what he does for those kids. He goes to their house at night to make sure they're doing their homework.
He's the best.
He makes sure that they try to get into college. If they don't want to go to college, I've worked with him a little bit to get some of his kids into trades. Those are the kind of people you need, and if you go to Aliquip on a Friday night, they may not get 4,000 or 5,000, but they get a pretty good crowd there. So there is a mentality there of football being very important. And I'm not saying it should be the most important thing in the school, but Mike Warfield instills in that community the devotion to the kids, to the program. They've won state championships, and you know, if you build it, they will come.
And they're building a new one now, long overdue. They're going to play their home games at Freedom this year. And on October the 28th, we actually have on KDK Radio, Central Valley taking an Aliquippa. Speaking of Central Valley, Mark Lyons, who grew up in this town that I absolutely love, Monaca, would want to live anywhere else. Just good people in this community.
Yes.
I mean, look at the job. Danny Matzo is the superintendent there, the former Rochester coach, Rochester player, Geneva College athlete. Makes it just blend beautifully. And I literally had him on the air when they won their first WPIL, and I started to almost cry. I mean, it was that emotional. You can't, and he's another one of these stand-up guys who's involved in their life, you know, on and off the field, just a great motivator. And I know this young man who now has got Monaca roots is in New Brighton, called Tori. I'm getting a little bit of that vibe too. And you see guys like Gene Matzo, 23rd year, just doing what he does. So coaching still matters, does it not?
I think that one of the big differences today, and coaching does matter with people like Mike Warfield, Gene Matsuk, you know, you get down the line, but I do think the big difference today is this. When we were in school, the coach had to be a teacher at the school.
Yeah, I think that's key.
And I thought that was a big difference from this standpoint. I'm walking down the hall, Joe Hamilton would pull me over. Your Spanish teacher talked to me today. You know, you're not making it there.
Right.
Why not? Whereas the coach being outside the program, they only see you on the field.
Mm-hmm.
For example, over at Aliquippa, Mike Semanek, great coach, but he was not in the high school. And he saw the kids for purposes of football, but he didn't see them in the school, in the community. I think that's taken away from sports to a certain extent. I don't know, we'll see.
Mike, by the way, now is helping Sharon McBride as
Yes.
an unpaid assistant, which is great. Love Mike. But you think of Yanessa, you think of Morocco, you think of my dear friend Larry Matraza. We were just looking at some of his statistics while he was at Geneva. What he did in New Brighton, you know, I mean, Joe leaves and everybody's wondering now where, and he ends up in 1980 with Brian Debo at quarterback, Pinchotti on that team, 14-12, Tom Donahoe, Seton LaSalle. So the chemistry is there, it's history, it's important, and that's why I'm so excited about KDK Radio. I think people need to understand high school athletics for a number of reasons, and now you have soccer, you have lacrosse, and I love it all, golf, tennis, girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling, big fan of that. But there's still something magical about Friday Night Lights.
There is, and I got to put a little plug in for my boss, Rick Mancini, who is he's a gem. But Rick, it shows you how important football is to people from our era. Rick played at Beaver Falls the same years that I played at New Brighton. He got a scholarship to play football at Louisville, and now he still announces Friday night games.
I know he does.
And it's important to him, and it's important to him to see kids develop. When you have people like that, it's important to the community. It shows that he wants to give back a little bit, and he still goes and does these games. It's something.
Last thing before you go, speaking of giving a little shout out, much blessings again to Gino DeMarco. Was supposed to be here tonight. Some family stuff came up. We'll get him here. We spent years with him on television, on social media. 1993 it starts for him, as I told Bernie, 155 wins, 5-1 in bowl games. Obviously it's a different landscape. You've got to get, you know, athletes to come, and you've got to get the cash to be able to get them money to be able to go to school. And he just continued to put out quality young men. And I don't know of anybody who works as hard or who is more dedicated. And you got to realize this guy spent some time in some big time Division I football, places like Georgia Tech, places like West Virginia. And he had the acumen to go wherever he wanted to go, but he wanted to stay home. And his late father, and obviously his mother, these were good people, his wife, his kids. And he's going to be a granddad here very soon, married young Jules Granati, that whole Beaver Falls flavor. So there's some really special people, but I think sometimes people don't realize how lucky we are to have Gino up there on College Hill.
Absolutely. Gino and I go back many years, and in
Yeah.
fact, he followed me after I had graduated from Baldwin
Wallace, right?
He went there for a year and then came back and went to Geneva. but we have a mutual friend, Jim Tressel,
Yeah.
out of Baldwin Wallace.
Right.
And Gino and I talk about that often, but honestly, I think Gino coached for nothing. I honestly believe that. Gino just loves the game, he loves kids. And when you go to Geneva, and when he was like the athletic director up there, he was at everything. He was at basketball, he was at baseball. He gave a lot of his life to that program, and he should be credited for that. What a great guy.
Listen, I tell people all the time, if you're stressed out, things just aren't going your way, get yourself a slice of pizza at Pizza Joe's. Go down to Matheny Fieldhouse in the middle of the winter and watch the boys and girls basketball team, and you'll realize that everything's okay.
Yep, you're exactly right.
Judge, I can't believe you did it. Judge Marmo, you see, there he is in person. Thanks to Bernie, and God bless you all. And just know this, Friday Night Lights, you're going to experience some stuff on KDK that you're absolutely going to cherish. They're really getting ready for an incredible season, and thanks to a mutual friend, Dr. Patrick DeMeo, who is team physician of the Pirates, head of the orthopedics division at the Allegheny Health Network in conjunction with Highmark. They're going to be the signature sponsor, and it's just a few days away. Bobby Palco, Mount Lebanon, Don Hall Gateway gets it underway, and a great schedule right through October 28th when it's Central Valley at Freedom High School, where it will be the home field of Aliquippa this year, taking on Mike Warfield and the Quips. And of course, the Coons Market Black and Gold Sunday show every week, and they're open right now at that Hopewell store. Never forget Coons Market. We'll be talking to those coaches throughout the year. Till next time, it's your Pratt Pack. Thank you for an enjoyable evening, and good night from the home office in Monaco.
Thanks for having me.